Psychology will tell you that you absorb other people's emotions because you have high affective empathy and porous boundaries. Myth will tell you that you are the wounded healer, carrying the same pattern that Chiron carried, that every medicine person and seer has carried for thousands of years. One of these explanations helps you manage symptoms, the other helps you understand why you were born this way. This is the difference between being categorized and being named. Welcome to Power and Myth. What you are about to hear is the foundation of everything we explore here. This is why this channel sounds different from every other INFJ channel you have encountered. It is why viewers tell me they have finally found language for the experiences they have carried in silence. Psychology gave us the framework, cognitive function theory, MBTI, the mechanics of introverted intuition paired with extroverted feeling. All of this matters, all of this is real. But psychology alone cannot explain why being an INFJ feels less like having a personality type and more like being trapped inside an ancient story that everyone else has forgotten how to read. Let me show you what I mean. Psychology tells you that you experience pattern recognition and unconscious synthesis at an accelerated rate, that your nigh-dominant cognition processes vast quantities of data beneath conscious awareness and delivers complete knowings. That is accurate. That is measurable. But it does not capture what it actually feels like to walk into a room and know that the couple sitting across from you will not make it to their anniversary, even though they are laughing, holding hands, and showing no visible signs of fracture. It does not explain why you saw it months ago, why you tried to warn them and they looked at you as though you were cruel for even suggesting it, why you have learned to stay silent about what you perceive because no one wants to hear it. Psychology calls this intuitive pattern completion. Myth calls it the seer's burden, the privilege and the curse of perceiving the invisible architecture holding reality together. One explains the mechanism. The other explains why you have felt alone your entire life, or take the door slam. Psychology describes it as a self-protective mechanism in which the INFJ permanently severs the connection after repeated boundary violations. Clinically accurate, behaviourally sound, but it does not touch the actual experience. The months of watching someone cross lines you never drew aloud because you assumed they could see them, the 100 chances you gave in silence, the moment when something inside you simply closes and the person is gone from your inner world so completely that others think you are heartless. Psychology frames this as a defense. Myth frames it as the moment the guardian of thresholds becomes the exile, the one who stood at the edge of your world, managing passage between your depths and the surface, finally stepping back and sealing the gate behind them. You did not reject them, you withdrew your labour, and the difference matters because it means you were never cruel, you were simply done translating yourself into a language they refused to learn. This is what myth does that psychology cannot. It gives you back your dignity. It takes experiences that make you feel broken, strange, or too intense, and shows you that they have always existed, that they have names, that you are not the first person to carry this pattern. You are participating in something that predates personality type by thousands of years. The seer, the wounded healer, the hermit, the shapeshifter, the exile, the seeker, the guardian of thresholds. These are the 7 INFJ archetypes. And when you begin to see your life through this lens, everything shifts. You are no longer trying to fix yourself. You are trying to understand which archetype you are currently living, which threshold you are crossing, and which shadow is rising to meet you. Jung understood this long before MBTI existed. He did not create a personality typing system. He mapped archetypes. He studied why certain patterns appear across cultures and time, why the same figures emerge in myths, fairy tales, and dreams regardless of geography or era. The wounded healer, the trickster, the wise old man, the threshold guardian. Jung called this the collective unconscious. Not mysticism, not spirituality, a term for the shared psychological structures that exist beneath individual experience, the patterns laid down over millennia of human existence that we all carry, whether we know it or not. What he discovered was this. Some people are wired to access these archetypal patterns more readily than others. Some people do not just think in concepts, they think in stories. They perceive the mythic layer beneath everyday interaction. And those people, Jung realized, are often deeply misunderstood because they are speaking a language the modern world has forgotten. This is Jungian archetypal psychology, the recognition that INFJ cognition is not just about processing data differently, it is about perceiving meaning differently. You do not experience a difficult conversation as an exchange of words. You experience it as a descent, a threshold, a rupture in the fabric of connection. You do not experience loneliness as the absence of people. You experience it as exile from a home you have never seen but somehow remember. This is not metaphor. This is the literal structure of how your consciousness organizes reality. You are mythically oriented. And the modern world, with its clinical language, its metrics, and its insistence that everything can be explained through neuroscience and cognitive function stacks, does not have room for that. So you learn to translate. You learn to call it social anxiety when what you are actually experiencing is the hermit's necessary withdrawal. You learn to call it overthinking when what is actually happening is that you are standing in the space between worlds, trying to make sense of patterns no one else seems to perceive. You learn to pathologize depth. And this is where psychology, for all its gifts, fails you, because psychology is designed to bring people toward a normative baseline, to help you function better in the world as it is. But what if the world as it is was never built for the way you are wired? What if your struggles are not symptoms to be managed, but initiations to be understood? The 7 INFJ archetypes are not a new typing system, they are an interpretive framework. A way of understanding that when you feel like you're observing your own life from the outside, you are living the shapeshifter's exhausting work of translation. When you absorb grief that does not belong to you, you are the wounded healer carrying the transmutation that has always been your inheritance. When you sense there is something more but cannot name it, you are the seeker, walking toward a recognition that has not yet arrived. When you withdraw not from weakness but from necessity, you are the hermit with the lantern, descending into your own depths to find what others need but cannot retrieve themselves. When you perceive what others cannot and are not believed, you are the seer facing Cassandra's fate. When you exist permanently outside belonging, you are the exile, and the loneliness is not situational, it is structural. When you stand between worlds, helping others cross whilst remaining on the edge yourself, you are the guardian of thresholds. These are not metaphors, they are maps. But here is the shadow that must be named. Myth can become spiritual bypassing if you are not careful. It can become a way to avoid the uncomfortable psychological work of setting boundaries, of confronting your people-pleasing, of admitting that some of your isolation is self-created. You can hide inside the language of the wounded healer and never address the fact that you keep choosing people who cannot meet you. You can frame every withdrawal as sacred solitude when sometimes you are simply avoiding intimacy. Myth elevates. But elevation without integration is escape. This is why power and myth holds both, the archetypal frame and the psychological precision. Jung spent his entire life insisting that individuation requires shadow work, that you cannot become whole by identifying only with the light. The seer must face the moments they withheld the truth out of fear. The hermit must face the ways they've used withdrawal as punishment. The wounded healer must face their addiction to being needed. Myth names the pattern. Psychology grounds the work. So why does myth explain the INFJ mind better than psychology? Because psychology tells you what you are doing. Myth tells you who you are becoming. Psychology gives you tools. Myth gives you context. And context is what makes the unbearable livable. When you understand that you are not failing at being a normal person, but succeeding at being an archetypal one, everything changes. You stop trying to fix your need for solitude and start honouring it as the hermit's work. You stop apologising for your intensity and start recognising it as the seer's inheritance. You stop feeling broken for not fitting in and start to understand that the exile was never meant to live inside the village. The village was always too small for what you carry. This is what we explore here at Power and Myth. Not personality management, not coping strategies for being too much. Initiation into the patterns that explain why you've always felt like you were living inside a story no one else can see. You are not a collection of cognitive functions to be optimized. You are an archetype in motion. When you begin to live that way consciously, everything you have experienced begins to cohere. The loneliness was preparation, the sensitivity was training, the exile was threshold. You are not too much. You are participating in something the modern world desperately needs but does not yet know how to name. And you are not alone in this. Every person who has found power in myth has found it because they were searching for language that matched the magnitude of what they have always sensed but never heard spoken aloud. Which of the 7 archetypes are you living right now? Tell me in the comments. And if you want to keep exploring this territory, subscribe. This is not a personality channel. This is an initiation into the ancient patterns beneath modern personality. You are part of something here. Until next time, find your power, know your myth.